Today we're going to go over how to use puzzle mats in Redshift for Cinema 4D. These are helpful because they're very similar to object buffers in physical or standard renderer, allowing you to mat certain objects in your scene. We're going to select the objects in our scene we want to apply the puzzle mat to and apply a Redshift object tag. Alright, there's many things we can do with Redshift object tags, but we're going to focus on the Object ID menu for now. We're going to select override for all of the tags, and then individually, I'm going to give each tag a separate number. So the first one will be 1, then 2, then 3. All right. So now essentially we're saying that the crane is object ID 1, the palace is object ID 2, and the truck is object ID 3. The next step is to go to the Redshift AOV manager. It's going to bring up this window. From the menu on the left, I'm going to select puzzle mat, drag that over to the right, select the puzzle mat, and this is important. You're going to want to make sure you switch it from material ID to object ID. At the moment, we want our mats to be separated by object. In some cases, you might want a mat for each material in your scene, and that's why you would use material ID. I find myself using object ID 90% of the time. So once we've selected object ID, we're going to give the red ID, green ID, and blue ID the same numbers as our objects. So 1, 2, 3. Once we've input these numbers, we can close the Redshift AOV manager. We're going to fire up the Redshift render view. One thing that's important for viewing AOVs in Redshift is to remember to turn on the bucket rendering mode, which is this button here. I'm going to switch it from beauty to puzzle mat, and now you can see that each one of our objects has a mat with the color that we've designated in our AOV manager. Alright, so now that we know that it's working in the IPR window, we can turn off the IPR and open our render settings with Control B. I already have a path set in my save menu. I'm rendering OpenEXRs for both the regular image and the multipass image. I'm going to use a multi-layer file. I'm going to go to my Redshift window. I'm just going to give this scene a couple more samples so we get something that looks somewhat decent looking. And okay, we're good to render. I'm going to change this to VO2. If you want to check that your AOVs were rendered correctly, you can go over to the layer window and you should be able to see any multipass renders you had going. You can see here we have our puzzle mat. So we should be good to go. Just going to save, and then I'm going to hop over to After Effects. In After Effects, I'm going to import the two EXRs we just rendered. I'm going to pick the multipass file. Now, initially, you're not going to see the puzzle mat, and that's because this is a multi-layer EXR. So what we need to do is apply the extractor effect. And that gives us this window here. You can see in the extractor settings, it knows that there's a puzzle mat layer in this file. And then I'm going to duplicate this layer, and for our base layer, I'm just going to turn off the extractor effect because we want our beauty pass. Make it orange so that we know what we're looking at. And then now what we need to do is use this puzzle mat to make mats for each of our object. Our first mat will be our crane, and what we need to do is turn the red, green, and blue parameters to puzzlemat.red, and that will give us this white image on our right here. Now we're going to do that for each of our objects. So we could say this is truck matte, palace matte, crane matte. So now we have a matte for each of our objects. I'm going to keep this as our base layer and duplicate it 3 times. And then I'm going to simply luma matte each of these layers. And if I turn off our base layer, you'll see that we've separated our objects from the background. And this is just going to be super helpful when we get into compositing and we want to make minute changes to the color or contrast of each of these objects without having to re-render the entire sequence. For example, if we go to our crane and we're not feeling like we want it to be this orange color for whatever reason, we can apply a hue effect and just simply shift the color. You know, say we want all of these to be blue. You know, we can adjust the color of each of these. So now we have an all blue comp, right? Turn our base layer back on, and there you go. So that was a quick breakdown of puzzle mats in Redshift for Cinema 4D. I think this will be a pretty essential part of your workflow if you're using Redshift. If this was helpful in any way, please throw me a like, and I will see you guys in the next video.